And I'm Akira.
And you're watching
Dante's Boxing Nation.
That was good.
Dante's Boxing Nation, what's going on, guys? So Inoue just became undisputed, beating Paul Butler. He stopped him in the 8th round, and ESPN's Joe Tessitore and Tim Bradley, they talked about the fight, and Tim Bradley gave ESPN some bad news. But it's funny, though, because whenever Tim Bradley or Andre Ward, whenever they're saying some things that are true, that they know maybe Joe Tessitore or the rest of the gang doesn't want to hear, they always talk to them as if they're talking to a mob boss. They talk as if they're walking on eggshells. And this is pretty much the way Tim Bradley gave them the bad news when it comes to Inoue and his flaws that he needs to work on. So in this segment, they started off talking about a potential fight between Inoue and Stephen Fulton because Inoue has already said that he's moving up to 122. So Tim Bradley, he gives his take on the fight, and he talks about how they're both good fighters and he doesn't want to pick anyone. But what's funny is while Tim Bradley is saying how, oh man, they're both really good fighters and I don't know who's going to win, I got to watch the film, etc., etc., etc. Later on in that same segment, Tim Bradley, he says that Inoue has flaws that he needs to work on and he's going to have to improve before he moves up in weight. But yet when Tim Bradley was talking about Stephen Fulton, he was only talking about all of the good things that Stephen Fulton does, all of his strengths, as if to say he couldn't really point out too many flaws when it came to Stephen Fulton. Now, Joe Tessitore, he started off the segment talking about nothing but Inoue's power, saying that he's going to go down in history as one of the greatest power punchers in the lower weight classes. And that's when Tim Bradley had to explain to Joe Tessitore, but yeah, he has a lot of things he needs to work on. And once again, Tim Bradley, he's trying to say it in the nicest way to Joe Tessitore, because he's trying to balance telling a little bit of the truth while at the same time staying on code. So I'm gonna go ahead and play this clip. Now, once again, the clip starts off with Tim Bradley talking about Stephen Fulton.
Fulton can box, he can fight from the southpaw stance, he can fight orthodox, he has good power, respectable power. You know, he's shown his ability inside the ring as a champion as well. That's a tough matchup right there. It really is. It's an extremely tough matchup, I believe, for both men. Without watching film, I can't tell you who I favor in the fight, but it's a great, fantastic fight.
I would have to think, and I have great respect for Fulton, that the power that we've seen out of Inoue is going to carry to 122 and to 126. This is
There's no doubt.
all-time generational power. I mean, the list of pure power punchers in the history of the sport, where you have guys like Joe Louis and Sam Langford, like all-time punchers, all the way through guys like Julian Jackson, and obviously so many heavyweights. But among lower weight class guys like Sandy Sadler and Jimmy Wild, this is a guy who's going to be thought of as on that list somewhere for the lower weight classes.
Yeah,
this is all-time God-given power.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it, Tess. You know, he's 29 years old. He has still a lot more to go. I don't think this is the finished product, to be honest with you. I think as he steps up in weight, he's going to have to continue to get better. I can tell you one area where I see he's a little weak, and that's inside and maintaining himself inside the pocket. You know, I think he would have been better suited and probably would have got the stoppage if he didn't pull out and get out of range as often as possible. If he would have stuck and cornered Butler and kept him occupied in that corner.
Okay, so Tim Bradley was basically telling Joe Tessitore in a nice way that power doesn't mean a whole lot if he cannot fix these flaws that I see right now. The fact that Tim Bradley is saying that Inoue is 29 years old and he still needs to get better, he still needs to improve, he still has flaws that he needs to work on. And once again, Tim Bradley is trying to say it in the safest way, like when he says, I don't think this is the finished product, which means Inoue still has a ways to go before he can be considered a complete fighter at age 29. Now remember, guys, fighters like Devin Haney, he's 23, right? Even Stephen Fulton is 28, and Tim Bradley is not saying these things about Stephen Fulton, which leads you to believe that deep down, Tim Bradley feels that Stephen Fulton, he beats Inoue and beats him comfortably. That's pretty much what the translation was. But Tim Bradley is not going to come out and say that because he knows they don't want to hear that. He knows they don't want to hear you saying that someone would dog walk the guy that they just said is #1 on the top 100 list over everyone. Tim Bradley knows his limits. He knows they want to hear him say stuff like, oh man, this Shakur Stevenson fight got me falling asleep. Man, I'm falling asleep. This is boring, etc., etc. He knows he can say stuff like that comfortably. That's why he says it. But when you're talking about Inoue, you got to say it a certain way. You got to be real careful the way you put it out there. And that's what Tim Bradley just did. But I tell you this, the fact that Tim Bradley still put it out there and said these things, knowing how high ESPN is on Inoue, that tells you Tim Bradley, he really sees him as a seriously flawed fighter, at least when it comes to stepping up in competition. You know, we've seen this story play out so many times where a fighter looks very dominant in a certain weight class, and then he moves up, and then he gets exposed. He gets knocked out. It happened to Chocolatito Gonzalez. It happened to Nonito Donaire. It happened to many fighters. And this is exactly what I see happening if Inoue gets in the ring with Stephen Fulton. If a 40-year-old Nonito Donaire can almost win a decision over Inoue in the first fight, if Donaire can actually outthink and outbox Inoue in some of the rounds, that means Stephen Fulton does it in all of them. Stephen has already said on numerous occasions that he would knock Inoue out, and I would have to completely agree with him. I see Inoue going out the exact same way Roman Gonzalez went out when he got knocked out. Now, with that being said, I'm gonna go ahead and wrap this video up with a final question. So guys, how is it possible a fighter that is 29 years old, who in Tim Bradley's words, still has a ways to go when it comes to improving? He still needs to get better. But yet Tim Bradley has never said this about a Terrence Crawford, a Shakur Stevenson, a Devin Haney, and the list just goes on and on and on. He's never said that about any of these fighters when they were 29 or even now. But he's only said this about Inoue. So how can that fighter be the one that people are saying is either pound for pound one of the best fighters in the world in the top 5, or even #1 the best in the world? It's a rhetorical question. We know what time it is. It's not adding up. They're trying to tell us that 2 + 2 is 5, and you have some people that are actually afraid to correct them. That's all I got for now, guys. I'm on to the next one. All right, now check this out, guys. If you're looking to repair eczema scars, burns and bruises, dark spots and blemishes, fever blisters, diabetic ulcers, this right here is the perfect product for you guys. It's called Elo Diki Face and Body Oil. Athletes and top-ranking boxers, they're also using it after training to reduce swelling, inflammation, and to ease the pain. So get yours today. Go to elodiki.com, like them on Facebook, and follow them on Instagram. Let me tell you guys about Issa Israel Law Firm. It is a full-service legal practice based in Denver, Colorado, an emerging hub for combat sports and high-altitude training. If you're a fighter inside or outside of the ring and you need a law firm you can trust to fight for you, visit thefighterfirm.com or email help@iilawfirm.com. Legal representation is usually limited to plaintiffs or defendants in Colorado, but iFirm can help anyone in the world with trademarking their business name, logos, and U.S. immigration issues. This brother has been my attorney for a while and helped guide me through all kinds of business and civil issues, so make sure you guys go to thefighterfirm.com.